Hello students, once again welcome to this edition of video lessons produced by the Department of School Education Nagaland. I'm Metozo, and today too together we will learn something new about our wonderful microscopic living world. I hope you have your textbook with you so that anytime you can refer to it when we are looking at the different pictures that we'll come across. In the last lessons that we have studied in the last lesson video lessons, we studied about something about single-celled microbes, multicellular microbes, right? So today we will be talking about something similar with that, and that is taken from our chapter 8 of our science textbook, and that is titled Cell, Structure and Function. Now in class 7 you have studied about organization of this living world, and then you have learned that things around us are either living or non-living. And further, you have learned that for an organism to survive in this world, you learned that the organism have to perform some functions for its survival. Can you remember those functions that an organism requires for its survival? Yes, those functions are nutrition, transportation, respiration, yes, and reproduction. So those are the basic functions that an organism is required to perform for survival. Now, for those functions like respiration, nutrition, or reproduction, for all those functions, there are certain organs that perform those functions. For example, for your respiration, your lungs is doing that work. For your transportation, your heart and all your bloods are doing that work. So different organs are there. So if we are able to break down those organs, if we are going to break down those organs into its constituent part, we will come across the tissue. Notice that you have noticed that the tissues of different parts are different. For example, the tissue of a liver is different from the tissue of a muscle, right? So we say that these tissues are specialized cells. Group of cells performing specialized functions. They are working for each. These tissues are going to do the work that they are specialized in. Now, if we break that tissue down further to its constituent parts, then ultimately we will reach the cellular level or the cell. When we look at the organization in a living world, we start if we start at the top, that is the biosphere from the ecosystem to the organism, and then as we come down, we come to the organ system, the organs, tissues, and then a cell. So the lowest unit level of this organization is the cell. What is this cell then? The cell before we enter that, let me take you back a long way in time. This year we are in 2020. Let me take you back to the year 1665. That was the year when Robert Hooke, a scientist, he was working on a cork. He took a slice of the cork and he observed it in his humble microscope. During the time, the microscopes are very simple. It's not like the microscope that we have today. We have so many sophisticated microscopes that we are able to look at very, very, very minute objects. But during his time, he had a very simple microscope. And with that, he observed the cork. And when he observed that cork cell. Now, if you look at your, if we look at in your textbook, if you look at the figure 8.1, you will see you have a picture of a cork cell. This is the cork cell that you have in your textbook. Now, this is a reproduction of the drawings that Robert Hooke made in 1665. Now, what does this drawing look like? If you look carefully, then all this looks like a honeycomb, right? We Nagas are very familiar with honeycomb. So they resemble a honeycomb, and Robert Hooke noticed that this honeycomb, for each block, there are arranged. This honeycomb is arranged like the bricks in our walls, the brick wall. So for each blocks, he found that they are separated. They are separated by from one another by a partition. So it looks like the brick wall for that. So Robert Hooke said that he came up with the word cell for each block. He was the one who coined the word cell. Now, what Robert Hooke observed was not a living cell. It was a dead cell, because if you look at his observation, we find that most of his cells are empty. So the cell that he has observed was the cork cell that he observed was a dead cell. And for the next 150 years, the people during the time didn't have much knowledge about the living cell. Now, today, with the advancements of science and technology, we have so many sophisticated microscope from that powerful microscope in our school laboratory. And then if you look at very large research laboratories, we find the electron microscope. So with that, with so many sophisticated technology, microscope around, we are now able to look at the living cell. We are now able to see its functions. Now, at the outset, if we look at your figure 8.2 in your textbook, you will find a picture of a brick wall and an onion peel. Now, the brick wall. When we look at the brick wall, you see a similarity between even with the drawings made by Robert Hooke, and then you find a similarity between an onion peel and a brick wall. Now, like what Robert Hooke has described, even for a brick, they are separated. I mean, they are separated from each other. There is a partition, and then, like when let's say when you construct your house, you start with one brick, and then you as you keep on going, you start constructing, you start with one brick, then first line, one line, then and so on and so forth till your wall is complete. Now you have the structure of your room is complete, room wall. Now, as you keep on building your house into a very complex building, you are constructing your house into, say, different rooms for different purposes, like room for your bedroom, or living room, kitchen, etc. Likewise, even our cells are being assembled to perform different functions. Now, looking at the onion peel, we find that they are so much similar with the brick wall. And if we look carefully, the difference between our brick wall and the onion peel is just that we find some dots on the onion peel. These are nothing but, these are the nucleus. And if we look, if we see, look carefully, we find that difference that we see is that the shape of, not the shape, we find that the difference between them is that the brick wall is a non-living structure, whereas the onion peel is a living structure. It has a complex functioning, which we will discuss. Now, if you ask me how we got this onion peel from, the picture of this onion peel, it is in the laboratory. What we do is we take a slice of the onion, we stain it so that we stain the sample so that the different tissues or the different organelles are visible. So we are able to see that in a microscope, and then with that we are able to reproduce that here. Now, not only with this onion peel, we are comparing the shapes, right? We are comparing the shapes now. So not only with the onion peel, we will find the cells have. When we look at more and more cells, we find that our world has a variety of cells. In terms of its shape, some are round, some are hexagonal, some are oval. So there is a variety of cells, shape and sizes that we come across. Now, in our living world, there are so many organisms. There are so many organisms ranging from a single-celled organisms to multicellular organisms, single-celled to many-celled organisms. Now, single cell, like the microbes that we discussed in the previous lessons, like the bacteria that are single-celled. Some protozoa and algae they have more than one cells, and then there are many-celled animals like us human being, from us to big animals like the elephants or the sperm whale, which is one of the biggest organism, animal that we come across. So the number and size of cells can also be different, from one cell to billions and trillions of cells in one organism. So depending on the number of cells that an organism has, we are going to divide the organism into two. One is those who are having one cell, single-celled organism, and those who have many. For the single-celled organism, they are called unicellular organism. Unicellular. Uni means single. Cellular means cell. So for those organisms that are single-celled organisms are called unicellular. And this, remember that these unicellular organisms, they perform all the functions just like us, like nutrition, respiration, reproduction, etc. And then that is one. And then now the other part is those organisms which has many cells. Those are called multicellular. Multi means many, cellular means cell. So multicellular organisms are those organisms that have many cells, and the functioning of these multicellular organisms becomes much more complex as we go higher in our studies. Now let's come to single-celled organisms. As I've said, these single-celled organisms or unicellular organisms, they perform all the function that an organism goes through. As I said before, nutrition, respiration, transportation, reproduction. So those are the functions that an organisms perform. Unicellular organisms, these single-celled organisms also do all those functions. Now, let's see the diagram in your textbook, figure 8.3. If you look at the figure 8.3, you have a picture of two organisms. One is amoeba. The other is a paramecium. Now, these two organisms, they are unicellular organisms. Now, like as I've said before, the amoeba and paramecium, they perform all the necessary functions that an organism needs to perform, but they don't have that specialized tissues for performing such tasks. All the nutrition, transportation that is going on, it takes place inside this single cell. Now, if you look at this amoeba, you must be wondering what is the shape of that. This. When we look at the amoeba, we wonder what will be its shape. Now, you see, amoeba is one organism that changes its shapes all the time. It does not have a definite shape. You know why? when it is hungry, or when it wants to eat when it wants to eat, or when it wants to move, what happens is that it produces all these shapes, lake-like structure, or its foot. So when it produces these, it's not a true word. I mean, it does not have a leg, it does not have a hand. So for eating, for gathering food, it produces these structures. They are called pseudopodia. Pseudo for false, podia for leg or feet. Now they produce these false feet called pseudopodia, and they will engulf the food, and then the food will directly enter the cells from where the nutrition will take place. And then when it wants to move, or it produces all these pseudopodias for locomotion. So for amoeba, it does not have a specific shape. So even in your books, you draw a diagram of any shape, then it will be correct, because amoeba does not have a definite shape. Now coming to the paramecium. What about this paramecium? Now when we look at the paramecium, we have a shape. We have an oval, sort of an oval shape organism. There are specific hair-like structures. These are the specific. There are hairs, small hair-like structure called cilia. There is the oral groove. There is an opening called the anal opening. Now, when we look at this paramecium, it has a mouth. It has a mouth to eat food. It has an opening for throwing out its waste. So this paramecium does not need to change its shape. It has this cilia to move around. So for a paramecium, it does not change its shape. And then even though this is a single cell organism, so even in unicellular organisms, you find that the shape of unicellular organisms can be of different types. Now, if we look at multicellular organisms like me, for example, as a human being, do I have cells that change shapes? Now just imagine like the amoeba. If my cells start changing its shape, it's a scary thought. Like we are looking at some movies of some aliens where we change the shape of our head or our body, right? And then we imagine that will not be possible in us. Well, let me tell you, what if I say that there is a cell in our body which changes its shape, and that is the white blood cell that is in us. The white blood cells, like the amoeba, it can change its shape. Okay, that is one cell where it can change. It also changes its shapes according to its requirement, its functioning. And then the difference between the white blood cell in my body and with the amoeba, what could be the difference? Yes, the white blood cell in my body is just a cell. It is a cell. It's not an organism. But the amoeba is a full-fledged organism performing all the necessary functions for survival. Now, what about cells in multicellular organisms? What about all those? What about the cells in those multicellular organisms like human beings, plants, I mean the plants in your garden or in your field or your flowering plant, the animals, your pet dogs or your domestic animals like the cattle, cow and the sheep and goat. The shape and size of our cell depends, I mean there is a variety of cells depending on the function that it performs. For unicellular organisms, we have so many cells. For example, if we look at this chart or picture that I have, we have different cells. Some are round, some are elongated, and these are a picture of two nerve cells, same nerve cells. So when we look at these cells we find that their shapes are all different. For our red blood cells, it's circular, right? And later on, we will, as you as you enter class 9 or and above, you'll find that these red blood cells doesn't have a nucleus. So so the cells are their function is quite different. I mean, their functions are not similar, but I mean, then the shapes are also not similar. So they have the different shapes according to their functions. For example, your muscle cells. The muscle cells are stretched, right? Elongated or elongated. They are like rubber. For example, when you are stretching your arms, these muscle cells, they stretch out. Okay. So it's with that function, it has its shape. And then when we look at the nerve cells, your nerve cells, they are in every part of your body. They reach to every part of your body. Remember that. So they are branched. They have got a very wide branch. Now, for a nerve cell, what happens is that this portion, which we call as this portion will get attached to this part, and then so like that it forms a chain. It forms a kind of branch. It branches out to every part. As for its structures and its structures and different parts, we will study that in the next classes. We'll just have to. For now, we will deal with how they are. We'll deal with only its shape. Now. Now, as we have seen in these three examples, these are not the end. These are not the end. You can go to the internet, open Google, and you can search for the different types of cells available. The different types of cells in plants, and then in the animals. You'll find variety of them. So the shapes. Some will be hexagonal, some will be oval, some will be rectangular. So the shape of the cell depends on its function. Remember that. Now, as we move on. the shape and size of the cells are also different for each organism. It doesn't mean that the shape of a cell, the size of a cell in my body will be smaller than the size of the cell in an elephant. It doesn't mean that. But then, depending on its function, the sizes will be different. Now, let's go back to the beginning of this class, and let's try to remember what we have come across. Let's try to recapitulate what we have done. Think about that cork. Who was that person who performed that experiment on a slice of cork in a microscope? Yes, it was Robert Hooke. And what was and he coined the name cell. Right? He came up with the word cell, and okay, and then. And then we also learned that the cell is a basic structural unit of an organ, because from one cell the organ is assembled. So I hope you remember. Now again, let's try to remember what are the functions that an organism performs. That is, yes, respiration, nutrition, transportation, reproduction. Yes, those are the important. Those are all the those are the functions that an organism is required to survive. And the organisms that are single-celled are called unicellular, right? Uni for single, cellular for cell. And those organisms which have many cells are multicellular. Multi for many, cellular for cell. So remember those words. Remember all those words that we have come across. Remember their what they do. And in the coming classes that we will be going through together again, we will discuss more on the cells. In the coming classes, we will dive deeper into the cell and look inside the cell. We will sit and see how the cell functions, how the different parts and how it functions. So in the coming days, please tune in again, because we have so many classes to go on. Even after this, even after this, we still have so many things to discuss regarding the cell in future classes also. So please remember to come. Tune in again. Thank you.